Wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Well, hello and welcome back. It is first full week in April. April Fool's Day and Easter was yesterday. And so today we're starting week 2 of the pilot double feature. Pilot to co-pilot, if you will. But today's been kind of a weird day. A little bit disjointed. Did a bunch of catch-up work today. Some custom templates for a few customers, I'm gonna say customers. They're friends of mine that wanted to get some custom work done, and I waited for 2 or 3 of them to pile up requests. That is so that I just take a block of time and go do that. It's kind of one of those things. Once you get in that mindset, you want to knock out as many of those projects as possible. And one of them was I don't know if you know who Bill Krause is, William Krause, but you ought to. He is a damn fine model maker. Does a lot of custom designed starships. Still very, very recognizable, very Star Trek, but they are the sleekest, best designs I've ever seen. And he's just a fantastic scratch builder. And for the last few years, he's been coming to me to get his registry pennants and numbers and names done so that I can make them out of vinyl and he can paint them on rather than having to rely on decals. And it's that time of year again. He always has the best ships, the best custom stuff at Wonderfest, and it's that time where we're getting down to it. We're less than 2 months, and he needed to get this year's names done. So I knocked that out today, and there are a couple other things. But so it's been a weird day. Didn't get a lot done on the pilots, but I have started working on the painting templates for the Space 1999 pilot ship. All of this weird orange, these weird stripes here that need to be painted on. And I'm thinking the best way to handle that is to do what I like to do, which is to paint orange or paint the color of the stripe where it's going to go, and then put a blocker over that and then paint the white around it. I think that it seems to work the best this way, and I think I would like to try that again on this pilot ship. So let me show you the progress that I've come up with, and maybe tomorrow we'll actually get some actual paint. Okay, here's what I've kind of come up with. This seems to satisfy all the minimum daily requirements for orange stripe. So now tomorrow what I'll do is go back in here, paint orange in this area, and then apply this stripe and then paint the white around it. And this shape here also needs to be orange and then kept orange. And then the only remaining interesting shapes are the bottoms of these, where it kind of goes up and down along this and follows that line. The rest of the stuff is just straight orange stripes. Like this first stripe here is orange. There are stripes on a landing gear that are orange. The entire back here is orange. That'll be fun to paint. And then mask off to keep it that color. And then there's some black that needs to be painted in there as well. But now, after doing all this stuff, I have to go back in and touch up the white that has peeled up. I swear, after all the white I put on here, I was surprised to see that any of it was peeling up. But it did, so I got to fix that and let that dry overnight. Well, okay, looky here. It's color day on the 1999 pilot ship. And it's a long and twisted story. I went out to get some more, went to check my paints, made sure I got the colors that I needed to do this painting today, because I was tired of looking at this white ship and I wanted to see some orange on it. And you know how much I hate painting orange. I hate painting orange as much as I hate painting metal, and this has got metal and orange on it. So I checked my trusty can of Tamiya orange, saw that I was almost out, and went to the hobby shop or the RC store to pick up some more paint. And while I was there, I decided maybe I needed to go ahead and get the Model Master acrylic orange instead, because the Tamiya orange doesn't cover. I mean, it and I have a rocky history at best, so I decided to use the the Model Master. I figured, what the hell, it's acrylic anyway. Bring it home and we'll put it on and it'll probably stick better. So all of that, got it home. Opened up the jar, and one whiff of it told me right away that I had mistakenly picked up the enamel rather than the acrylic. The hobby shop that I go to, here's where I make an excuse, they have 3 racks of paints, and for some bloody reason it goes an enamel, acrylic, enamel. They have one string of acrylic paints in the center of 2 racks of enamels, and so I picked up the one from I sure was the acrylic pile, and got it home anyway. It's the enamel. See, I went and got other enamels at the same time, or other acrylics at the same time. But me being stupid, I should have double checked. So anyway, I get home with enamels. Enamels I don't really like using because A, it takes forever to clean up, and B, they smell and I have to use more ventilation and all that kind of stuff. But I figured, what the hell, I'm home, and you know what? Enamel orange might cover better than acrylic orange anyway. So I got it out, sprayed it up. Now, I've got some tape to tape off areas where the paint's going to go, and masks. Like, I was just painting in this area because I'm going to cover that up. Now, I don't know how well the white Tamiya is going to cover up the overspray here, so that's something to worry about. But the enamel does make a nicer, heavier coat, and the orange is nice and resilient. So we're just letting that dry, and here I've got the bottom of the globes painted, and I've got some yellow vinyl masking these off, and we're going to see how well this lands. I went ahead and sprayed that with the acrylic, or the acrylic Tamiyas while I was at it, and I did some, gray on the dots and some shading in gray, but and I went ahead and painted like the stripes on the landing gear and that kind of stuff. So long story short, letting the enamels dry, and they might even stand up to the vinyl masks a little bit better. So long story short, I know, too late you say, letting the enamel dry for a little bit, and then I will take off the masks and see how cleanly those lines worked out. Okay, I've gotten the masks off, but man, is there overspray. Even more than the intentional stuff. It's just all over the place. These look pretty good. The globes look pretty good. But underneath there, you can really see that orange just got all over the places it wasn't supposed to get. So yeah, there'll be some cleanup aplenty coming. So we'll probably let that go for overnight. Let that enamel, give it a good chance to finish up, and then come back and hit this thing maybe tomorrow with the next set of details. Now there's a black color here that needs to be painted on. I'm wondering, no, I've got to mask those off. So let's let that go till tomorrow, and yeah, we'll just let this sit and think about what it's done. Okay, since I kind of backed into pulling the trigger on using enamels on the pilot ship for the orange, I wanted to at least make sure that the blacks were as strong. So I did these guys in black and orange enamel, and as well as stripes on the landing gear and things like that. And I've gone in and touched up little bits where overspray has happened or underspray has happened. So still a lot of white to patch, but this is a much better place to leave it overnight with this stuff drying. As you can see, I painted into black up here and these guys, but it's a much stronger place to leave it overnight. And then tomorrow I can come in, and I might have to back up and get some white enamel to go over top of that. It may require white enamel to go over that, over the orange enamel. So if that happens, then I have to run out and get some, because I don't know if I've got any white enamel here. But worst case scenario, I can decant some of the spray cans of white that I use on things like Proteus and things like that, and use that to touch up the white. The problem is with whites is whites aren't all alike, and if you use one version of white, you have a trouble sometimes matching it with another color of white. So if I start using white that's not Tamiya here, it might
you know, I might have to end up redoing all of the white everywhere to make it all match, and that's not going to make anybody happy. So we'll have to take that, play that by ear, play that very carefully tomorrow, but I'm going to let that dry. I think maybe one last thing I can do is to paint the silver on the landing gear and call it a day on that. Well, good morning. It is Wednesday, and we're back at the pilot ship, even though I think I spent too much time on it yesterday because of this orange paint, this enamel paint. Enamel paints are very selfish paints. They demand to be left alone. They demand that they take a whole day to dry. They just make all kinds of demands on you that acrylic paints don't, and that's why I don't care for them. Plus, they stink to high heaven. And since it is April and pollen season here in North Carolina, I can't open the windows to air out the place, because if I do, then I will get a fine mist of greenish yellow pollen on everything, which is not good for anybody. So I'm kind of virtually locked in with that. Doors closed and the windows closed, and the drapes drawn, and cowering from the outdoors. A good rain, which I'm hoping we'll get in the next 2 or 3 days, will do everything to knock that down. But for right now, it's everywhere. You go out and you'll come back in with a green haze on you. Anyway, you don't need to hear the weather report. We're back on pilot today, the pilot ship, and this orange, even though it's still not as dry as I would like it to be, is dry enough to start masking. And I've masked the orange stripes here, and I want to keep orange, and I'm painting white in light coats over top of it, because this acrylic paint the enamel paint is being very selfish and making itself hard to cover up. So light coats of white paint on top of it to try to bring that up. Working better on the landing gear than on the body itself. So we're letting that dry, and we'll come back and hit it again. But the black stripe here, I was able to put in like 2 minutes this morning. The orange, still not so quick. Worked on the engines a bit today, sprayed on that. I know it looks a bit artificial and toy-like on the silver, but I'm going to add some maybe a wash over that after that's had a chance to dry. And you can see here where I want to do some more white shading. So we're letting this go, and here's the underside. You can see the orange on the orbs looks pretty good. I may want to go in and do some shading on that, some panel line, some panel shading, that sort of thing. But this is where it sits for right now. Okay, this is what the doctor ordered. I needed to put aside the regimented black and yellow, or black and orange and white ship, and get the other pilot out and do a little bit more freeform stuff. I was getting frustrated at it, and best to walk away when I was getting frustrated at it. So I've put a coat of gray over top of this blue to kind of shark it down a little bit. It's got more of a grayish blue color to it, and not as blue as it was. But now I'm going to go in and try to bring out some of the highlights on this tan, and then I'll be ready to. I'm going to do some tan on the underside of the arms, and bring this up a little bit on the body there, and then I'll go about doing similar work on the burgundy color. Okay, I've just spent last hour or so putting a wash over the fleshy bits here on the joints and the elbow and the wrist and all of that, and then I went back in and bumped up the contrast, or bumped up the definition between these different sections, painted repainted the whole red, and then did that wash over the fleshy bits here. And I think there'll be one last dry brushing over the ivory bits, or over the beige bits, before I'm ready to start putting in the little squiggly detail. But that will be probably after lunch. Well, I think I've stumbled onto something. Playing around with textures and techniques for doing the mottling on Pilot's hood, his carapace, and his arms. And I think I may have come across something that I like. Whether you can see it, there you go. It's particularly on the arm parts. The hand I'm still playing with, but the arm parts, I've got basically this going on where I've got, to show you an example, I've got two colors faded into each other, top and bottom. One is, obviously you can see, is like an ivory, and the other is a bluish or deep teal color. And then I've got, of course, the elbowy stuff. But by taking a lighter version of the tan and a darker version of the teal, I am coming up with something like that just by spotting and speckling on it, that it's coming across to something that I really like. So now is the time when I am tempted to overwork it, so I need to walk away from it at this point. Remember how I did it, but walk away from it. I also took the Comart translucent, opaque violet, and I watered it down, and I just traced it inside some of the wrinkle lines on Pilot's face to give me some more dimension there. I did a nice wash over the whole bulk of the body here with the Vallejo Rust effect to give me those nice browns and deep browns, and I really like how that turned out. I'm happy with that, happy to the point where I don't want to mess with it anymore right now. But yeah, it's coming along nicely, and meanwhile, over here, Pilot ship is drying. You can see where I went in with some grays to do some pre-shading that I can hit again with white and bring those back out. At the same time, I put the next coat of white over top of that. It's easier for the gray to cover up the bleeding through orange than it is for white to cover up bleed through orange, so I put a coat of gray on the areas where the orange was bleeding through, and then I will cover that up with white, work it backwards from there. We'll see how it turns out. Okay, first crack at Pilot's eyes. I think they came out pretty good. I'm going to put a wash over them. I've learned that if I put like a brown wash over the eyes, it will dull down the horrible differences between the pupil, the retina, and all of that kind of stuff. So I like the colors though, and he's got the right stare. Everybody's looking in the right direction, so very happy with that, and I think we're going to leave good enough alone. I played around with some more coloring on the trunk there for the grayish blue parts. Happy with the hand and the way the arms are turning out, so good place to leave it for the night. Good morning and welcome back. It is Thursday morning. I know sometimes people wonder why I put the day in every day, but to me it helps keep me straight when I'm putting the videos together. In case they come in out of order, I can't always listen to the beginning and I'll know what day it was. Anyway, the good thing about switching back and forth between two different kits is that it forces me to keep my workspace clean, because I clean up. I have basically two different sets of paints, two different sets of tools, and all that kind of stuff. So yesterday I was working on Farscape Pilot into last night, and this morning I want to put a hopefully the final coat of white on the 1999 Pilot ship. So I have to clean the table off and get ready for that. So let's put out this morning's. One last thing on Pilot. There's a spot that really wasn't smoothing down on his hood, which was quite noticeable because it's like right up front. So I want to get a coat of primer and blue on this so they can be sitting out and drying while I am working on the other Pilot ship. So let's take care of that thing first, and then we can get on to this pilot ship, which is hopefully ready for it. Like I said, its last coat of white. Okay, here we have today's victim. I've got the overshading done, and that's dried since yesterday. So now my goal is to put a light coat of white over top of all of this, not to plaster it on too much, just a nice light coat, and flip it over, maybe do the bottom, see how much I can get done, and then come back maybe a little bit later and do a second coat. But the secret is to do it lightly. I don't know how much you can tell, but it is a little bit whiter. You still see some of the panel lines in there, which is good. Keeps it from looking like a white toy. But yeah, let this go, and then I'll come back and put one more misty coat over it and see how it looks when we take those stripes off. That's a big scary thing right now. Okay, it's a good news, bad news kind of thing. The good news is the stripes are off. The bad news is I lifted up a whole bunch of paint straight down to the resin there. So as much as I must have washed it, I must have missed that bit, or else didn't get all of the mold release off of there. But it does give me nice crisp lines that I can hand paint back in. So I think that's what I'm going to do, rather than trying to remask and respray. I'll just try to hand paint those in. Okay, not a horrible patch job. I'll let that dry and then see if I need to go over it again. But I think it patched up the orange pretty well. So we'll let this dry and try to air out the room, because it's stinky enamel paint. Okay, here I am with your lesson for the day. I don't understand. It has been so long since I have painted with enamels that I forgot the rules. I touched up these stripes by hand a couple, 3 hours ago. And look at this. Dry as the day is long. Nothing, no problem. I don't get it, because when I sprayed airbrush, same paint, same exact paint jar, but when I sprayed it with an airbrush, even though I did shake it and mixed it, did all that good stuff, it did not dry until overnight. And I don't understand what the difference is. One is applied straight out of the jar, and the other was airbrushed on. But here I was expecting to have to wait overnight to at least before I could even go back and touch this stuff. And look at this. Beautiful. Done. I don't get it, but I'm going to take it. So now I'm going over the one last time on the whites. And then I will probably let this dry a little bit longer, and before turning in this evening, I think I will hit it with the gloss coat so that I can put the decals on it tomorrow. Won't that be fun? We might even get this done this week. Good morning. It is Friday. Time to work on pilots plural again, and I want to get a coating of paint on the wings, the chicken wings here, before I go over to the 1999 pilot, which the next step, here he is over there, the next step for him is the gloss coat before the decals come, and I have to wait for it to warm up a little bit outside before I can do that. It's still a little bit chilly, so what I can do here is get some paint on this and then set it aside. What I'm using is the Comart Bone Color, and what I want to do is just do a nice light pass on the undersides of the arms and the claws, and put that aside. And I tried an experiment with a little bit of a green on the bone color here, and I didn't like it. So I'm going to try to remove some of that this morning. I just think introducing green at this point is a little bit, it's off-putting. I'm not used to it. I don't like it, so I'm going to try to eradicate it. But I do want to give the undersides of these a nice light pass. Well, good morning again. It is that time. It's time to put a good glossing on this so that I can put decals on it. It has set up overnight, dried up, and it is ready for a good glossing. And then we will hit it with the decals. Now, using clear gloss, and clear gloss on white always gives me nerves because it will turn yellow, or it can turn yellow, certainly easier than most other things. So what I want to do is mix this very well so that I'm getting a good mix of the protectant and the propellant and all of that. And then what I'd like to do is gloss it, decal it, and very quickly put a flat coat over that so that the gloss coat does not have a chance to really turn yellow before we put a flat coat on it. It is warmed up a little bit outside. I'm going to gloss the areas that get the decals, not necessarily the whole ship. Like I like this, so I don't want to get any gloss on that because it will ultimately, everything this far back I'm going to block so that it doesn't get glossed or flat coated. But everything else is looking good, and it's time to get to the spraying part. You know, I'm thinking again, and before I decide to put the spray on here, I want to do this last bit of construction, which involves putting the big thruster on the bottom, the forward landing gear, and this probe antenna thingy, because I really want to get those mated in here before we put clear coats on it, because I don't think the adhesive will stick to the clear coat that well. So let's get that done, and then we'll be ready to put the clear coat on, which actually it's still not all that warm outside, so that'll give it a little bit more time for it to warm up while we're doing it. Okay, I've got a good coating of gloss, particularly over the areas where the decals are going to go, and immediately it started bubbling up and doing the alligator skin thing, so I am letting that settle back down. I'm not trying not to get too hyper about it until it's had a chance to dry, and then we'll see how it reacts. I have seen cases of that before where it does settle back down, and I have seen cases of it where once you put another coat of flat or satin over top of it, it also settles it back down. So trying not to react to it too much at this point. I do think there's going to be some touch-up painting that needs to get done after the decals are down, but before the final flat coat gets put on. So let's let this dry for a bit and come back to it. Well, we're ready to put the decals on the Space 1999 pilot ship, and this brings us to the segment of the show that has become very popular. As a matter of fact, I hate the fact that I have to keep doing it, but I feel like I need to do this so often that it needs to get its own theme song or something, so I will cut in a nice title here. I hate to keep harping like this. The decals are printed very well. They are not they're not poorly registered. They're very clear. They're very sharp. But here is where we have to complain about the decals for this particular ship. Okay, here are the instructions as far as they go for the decal placement on this kit, as well as the paint color callouts. There's where you see everything that is blue is a paint color, everything that is green is supposed to be a decal. Well, they show what? Number 19, number 18, number 16 on the decals. The decals go as high as 19, I believe. Here's the decal sheet you get. There's not 19 different designs here. And as far as anyone can tell, can you spot what's wrong with this decal sheet just on a quick cursory glance? I noticed it right away, but I'll give you a second or two. Okay, time's up. Which decal is which? There are no numbers on this decal sheet. When it says to put number 2 in a particular place, there is no decal 2. To tell you the truth, There are a lot of decals that are simply missing, things that are supposed to be decals that are not. I didn't know until I took a good look at the instructions that these orange stripes that I had so much fun painting in, those are supposed to be decals. Those decals were not provided. These stripes on the legs, on the landing gear, those are supposed to be decals. Those decals were not provided. I'm almost willing to bet that the little dotted shapes here are supposed to be decals, but I painted those in because, hey, there are no decals there. I bet you that black stripe was supposed to be a decal. I mean, come on. I can forgive a lot of things, but I know print. I spent 30 years working with print. I know how to set up a print file. And I know that decals are printed, and I know that instructions are printed. I may not know how to cast parts. I may not know how to mix resins, but I do know how to print things. These instructions do not match these decals. You have a best guess of where these decals are supposed to go based on tiny amounts of detail in these instructions. Frankly, you get a better look, and I don't know why they repeated these shapes here. I don't know whether there's supposed to be two sets of decal or two sets of instructions or what, but giving me the same 3/4 front view and the 3/4 underneath view does not help me a lot. If you'd have done all 4 sides, then maybe yeah, but somebody screwed up on the instructions. But I can tell from looking at the instructions that there's a decal that needs to go there. There's a decal that needs to go on the ball there. Below the door, there's the fire decal, which I believe is this fire access decal. But there's nothing on the other side. Let me see if there's anything on the other side. Yeah, I could use the other fire access decal on the other side. It's just shoddy. Shoddy. Again, if these big orange stripes were supposed to be decals, then it would have been a lot easier than for me having to make masks of that and paint them on. I'm looking at this here, this shape 18, which I'm guessing is one of these, because I'm looking at where there are 4 of them to guess where they go. I can tell that these 2 need to go on the door. Actually, by zooming in on the printed instructions here, I can actually see them better with my old eyes than I can looking at the actual instructions. So I can kind of figure out that, yeah, okay, I'm getting an idea based on that where some of these are going. But man, you don't make it easy on a guy. Well, I'm happy to say the decals, for what they were, went on very well. They weren't nearly as delicate and fragile as I was afraid they were going to be. They came right off of the backing. They didn't have to soak for 3 hours. I mean, they dip them in the water, count to 10, you're ready to go. So everything's on. I'm going to let these dry for a bit. I put a little bit of the Solvaset on top of them to dissolve the carrier film. Since these were printed straight on carrier film, they didn't have any separation like, you know, standard decals. There was no ring around them or anything, so it was all decal film. So they needed to be Solvasetted into place. Luckily, there was no problem with them having to bend over any sharp angles or anything, because they all pretty much went on flat. The surfaces that they went on were pretty flat, so no problem there. So let this dry for a bit, and then I'm going to come back in and give it a good flat spritzing. No, I take that back. I don't know why I keep forgetting to do this. I'm going to put a quick gloss over just the decals, but then I need to touch up all of the paint before I can put on the final flat coating. Well, in the great race of the pilots, this ship seems to be the first to cross the finish line. It is not exactly done yet, but right before I close up shop for the week and start putting this video together, I'm going to hit it with a flat coat to dull down all the glossy paint and see if that doesn't make everything look a little bit more realistic, as it were. So, but right now the decals are drying in, and I've gone around it and picked at it a little bit and done some final touch-ups of paint. So now it's time to sit there and watch the paint dry, among other thrilling things. Alrighty then, back to Farscape Pilot for the week. And I'm happy with basically all of the base colors that I've got in. But now there's like a second layer of detailing. And on the head, on the carapace there, it is more of a series of blurry dots. It's spotted. On the arms and on the shoulder bits, it's more like almost a language. There's little hieroglyphic-y looking squiggles on there. I tried doing that in here to some success, but on the head, and I think also on the spine piece, it's more of a or less of a language and more just spots, which is going to finally give me a good excuse to pull out these, which are pattern templates that I've got many years ago at Wonderfest, and have never had a real good reason to try them out. I thought of using them with Christopher Johnson, but I never found a really good place to use them. But here on Pilot, it would seem to be a natural. So I'm going to mix up some darker blue paint here, and by holding it at a distance, I should be able to make unfocused dots, softer dots than I would by holding it, flat down on the surface. So I'm going to experiment on it at least to see how it turns out. So let's find out together. Well, I quite like that. Trick is not to go overboard with it, but that was obviously a pass with the that is sea blue going through the templates. Now I think what I want to do is maybe do another pass with a lighter color, so you get more of a mottled effect. But the trick is not to let it go murky on you and to keep the lines somewhat defined. Yeah, I like that. You put that up next to Pilot's head. Yeah, that has the look. To quote Roxette, that has the look. I'm going to do a bit down the spine and call this first round a success. Okay, it's time for an executive decision, and I think let's see how good that worked on the spine. Isn't that lovely? And on the head, and I tried it on the backs of the hands, and I love it. And I'm making an executive decision to put it on the backs of the arms as well, because anything that I try to draw on there is going to look purposeful and not random. So it would stick out like a sore thumb on the rest of this random stuff. So I am going to use the same technique, maybe find a different pattern for the arms. I just like how it turned out so well. And this is where we're going to leave Pilot for this week. I pieced them all back together. Nothing is glued down yet, but I really like how that mottling is working. I still want to do one pass with lighter spots. Don't want to get too nuts on it, but I do want to do a lighter spots. But look at that. Face only a mother could love. Very happy with that. Yes, I know the Canon, it looks more like little cross hatches, but I like this effect. I really do. Very happy with how that turned out. So these areas here need to be readdressed still. But yeah, I like the way the speckling is going down the spine. Yeah, very happy, very happy. Good place to leave it for the weekend. Here's where we're going to leave both of our projects for the week. I think I'm ready to stick a fork in this Pilot and call it a done thing, but I may find some things over the weekend that I'm still going to pick at it over. But Pilot's almost done. Some tightening up of the patterning that I'm doing and fixing these areas, but almost done. And then we got to figure out what we're going to build next. I had a request in the last couple of weeks to pull out some older projects or products that I had done a while ago, models that I had built and didn't show the final of. And here is the final of Maria. I think she turned out rather spiffy. That's the base with the lights. But I was remiss in showing how she finally had turned out. So there you go. And the other one was, I need to dust it off a little bit because it gets dusty very easily, is actually Farscape related. And that was somebody who I am blanking on the name right now, sorry about that, asked me to dig out my full-scale DRD, and that's this guy. Full-scale DRD that, I don't know if there's any battery juice left in it or not. No, I must have taken the batteries out, as I do when I'm leaving things go for long periods of time. Yeah, there you go. But this is the full-scale DRD, which would probably scare Pilot to hell and back if I showed him this, because Pilot is used to seeing DRDs be about that big. So, hope you enjoyed the up close and personals. And I think that's going to do it for this week. Pretty good week all in all. Major disruptions outside. The road in front of my house got repaved, recovered, refinished, relined this week. So there was a lot of beeping construction vehicles and that kind of noise and disruption and backed up traffic and that kind of stuff. And now we have the pleasant aroma of fresh asphalt in the air, which actually is kind of a nostalgic thing for me, because I grew up in an area where oil products and things like that were very constant reminders. So I don't actually mind the smell of fresh asphalt. But getting off of the road and back onto the models, things went well. I really like the texture that I was able to get on Pilot. Now, there's two things I like: finding an easy way of doing something, and finding a less tedious way of doing something that I have to do a lot of. So finding this new technique or utilizing this new technique really appealed to me. And grousing about the decals, another favorite thing of mine to do, because like I said before, and I'm not going to go into a long diatribe, but I know print, and I know how easy it is to fix something that is printed. It's not like you've made a set of molds, and yes, it would be horribly expensive and inconvenient to remake a mold, or you've cast something with a bubble, like I said, and you let it go. Print is the easiest thing in the world to fix, and they really should have just paid a little bit more attention to their printing. And that's where I'll leave that off. And when I see George, I'm gonna, such a pinch. But that's neither here nor there. So until next week, when we will be wrapping these guys up and probably starting something new midweek, I don't know. Be good. Be good to one another. Be good to a stranger. Wouldn't that be fun? And we'll see you here next week.